April 8th. We are out here at the land today. We just met with our engineer, Chris Hoover, who is doing our engineering for the property. He's mapping out all of the information on our house on the land with the stormwater and the septic and all that good stuff. So we met him out here today to kind of see where we would lay out the house, and we're pretty much changing the entire plan that we had that I've been talking about, because we're going to change the orientation and location of where we're going to build the house on the land. So I kind of wanted to walk you through the new plan of what we are thinking of doing, and it's going to look so beautiful when it's all said and done. On paper right now, it's like unreal to see it, but I'm actually really excited after we stood out here and talked to the engineer about the location. So this is kind of the view of where the house is going to be. So pretty much where Jason put this sign is actually kind of where we've been putting the location of the house since we've been standing here. So it's actually pretty awesome that he located it just kind of perfectly. But from about where the sign is, I'm going to back up here onto the road. So this is our road out here. And from where the sign is pretty much where the driveway is going to go in at, because where these flags are here is marked for our septic system, which they're going to do an elevated sand mound. So pretty much back from this sign straight back is where our house is going to be, and the house is going to be facing this direction. So that will all be our backyard that you see pretty much here. And then this is going to turn into side yard, which originally this was going to be backyard. So now this will be part of our side yard, this will be backyard, and then this is all going to be front yard. So that really changes the orientation of everything, because originally we were going to have the house facing kind of this way. So it's going to look entirely different now, but I'm actually really excited, because if you look on the flip side of all of this, so walking like towards pretty much up the driveway right now, location wise, this is going to be the view from our front yard. So as you can see, it's all just going to be trees, which is so pretty. And then looking over here in this location, this is where my new area for the garden is going to go. So this will all be garden space. So you can see where the sun is at right now. It's going to get all morning sun with nothing blocking it, unless our neighbors build something really close to our garden, which I doubt it. Both of these lots have sold now, so we're not sure who our neighbors are going to be or what they're going to build, but that, I mean, besides the point. As long as they don't build right up against our lot, we should be okay. So this will all be really pretty front garden. It'll get beautiful sun, and then the trees are not super tall right in front of it, so it really won't block anything till later in the evening, which is absolutely perfect for gardening. So we likely are going to spend a little bit more money on grading, because we are going to be going deeper into the hill instead of being more on flat land. But as we were talking to the engineer, it kind of just made the most sense to be back behind the sand mound instead of in front of the sand mound, because if we were in front, then we would take away a lot of space in the backyard for us to have the ability to put in anything back there. So we changed the orientation to behind the sand mound and having that kind of more to the side of the house. That way, you know, we have all this open ability to do what we wanted to do in the backyard. So that just made the most sense for us. But I'm actually really excited now to see that this area right here, this is pretty much going to be my view out of my morning room. And I think that that is just absolutely stunning. And I can't wait for, like, the fall is going to look so beautiful. Winter, when it's snowing, it's going to be beautiful. And days like today, I mean, it's freezing cold today, but the sun is out and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. So I'm really excited to just kind of see, when this is all done, how our decision to change the orientation of the house is going to make such a difference versus having like this as our backyard. I think it would have been entirely different, and I'm really glad that our engineer made that recommendation to us to change the style of where the house is going to be. I'm sorry, the orientation of where the house is going to be. So yeah, really excited. I'm going to walk through a little bit later the lot development costs, what it costs for an engineer, to kind of break down this process for you guys to see exactly what we're doing with this step, because he pretty much said June may not be our groundbreaking. It's probably going to look closer to July, because we do have a couple different permits that we have to pull for this lot specifically, being in a conservation district. That may take a little bit longer. So knowing that our lot might get pushed back a little bit as far as being able to build on. It's a little bit disappointing, but I get it. I totally understand why. It's just, we're going to be in this process a lot longer, but this is kind of the boring part that is really important. So I'm going to be super excited to walk through what that looks like with you so you can really understand. This is probably one of the more interesting and intricate parts of the building process. And it's just very lengthy and it takes forever. And I feel like we are just playing a waiting game right now and sitting around, and it's really anxious. But as it's not fun, it's important. So I'm excited to show you what all the in-depth pieces are to this. But I'm just so excited. I love coming out here and looking at the land on different kinds of days. I just can't wait to make this our home. Okay, so I'm back home and I have my computer in front of me, so I'm able to kind of give you the full rundown of numbers from pretty much the beginning of this process to literally now, which is we have our engineer under contract, we're under contract with Berks, and what we know is what we know as far as cost. And keep in mind that a lot of things with this are estimated, but the estimates are going to be relatively close. And it's a little scary to think about that, but I'm going to walk through it and explain why these costs are the way that they are and how we could possibly have some wiggle room in there. But pretty much up to this point, as far as the land, which we've already purchased, and our selections, which we've pretty much solidified and not really changing anything at all, really our Exhibit C, which is the land development cost with Berks, that is going to be the thing that can fluctuate at this point. And obviously hiring the engineer and getting to this point, we're trying to figure out what those final costs are going to be. And we won't know that for an extended period of time because we're still going through permitting and everything else. So with that being said, starting with the base price of the Black Cherry, which is the home style that we have chosen to build with Berks, our base price is $218,000, which for a home of this caliber is not bad until you get into your selections. And that is where stuff hits the fan, guys. Like, depending on what you add to your home, which again, if you watched our selections video, you would know we have added some things that we did not necessarily need, but we wanted and knew for the future it was going to be more cost effective to do now than later. So looking at our Exhibit A, which is the structural and selections gallery options that we have chosen for the house, we, on top of that $218,000, have added about $103,000, almost $104,000 in selections and all of that. With that being said, the basement and the morning room that we've added were pretty much almost half of that chunk, because the morning room was about, I want to say, close to $19,000-$20,000, and the basement was another $20,000-$25,000. So keeping in mind that we did some pretty big upgrades, if you were not looking to do those upgrades, that's going to make a big difference in the cost of your structural and selection gallery options. But for our sake, to explain the actual options that we chose so you can better understand kind of where we're coming from with our total costs, the Black Cherry that we chose is an elevation B. So we did upgrade the exterior, which also added a cost. So for that $218,000, that is with the elevation. Then with the structural and selection gallery options being at about $104,000, we're at about $23,000 just in picking the style of the house, the actual house itself, and what's going in the house. That is $320,000. Okay, then you have the additional costs, which is your outside cost, your Exhibit C, your land development. And depending on the type of property that you're purchasing, whether it's on your own land or in a Berks development or with any builder, whatever that looks like for you, you're going to endure some sort of land development cost, whether that's roped in already with the builder and they have that priced out for you, or you're going to have to figure that out yourself on your own land. You're going to pay for that land to be developed. It's not free. So you pay for land even when you're buying with a builder, because that cost is roped in. So you're buying that chunk of land. You are then buying the ability to get that land to be usable and permitted, and then you're putting the house on that land. So Exhibit C is where things get a little bit confusing, and this is where my anxiety has stemmed from with this process, is the unknowns of Exhibit C, meaning things can come up in the process. Like, what if you hit rock? Okay, like, you don't know if you're going to hit rock on your lot, so that could cost you a lot of money. Or what if you need an extended driveway? That could cost more money. What if you need to move the house's location like we did today? And what is that going to cost us now to dig a little bit further into the ground so we can level out the property? All these things can change. So that's why these estimates can be really scary. And the best thing that our builder has done for us is overestimate, right? Which I'm hoping that's still an overestimate, just when you hear the overall cost of how this is going to go. But it's good to overestimate on the overall cost because you genuinely don't know what you could possibly run into with this whole possible dig and build process. So literally from the time we signed our contract, March 12th or 13th, whatever that was, to now, which is April 8th, and then until the foreseeable future of this property being done, we really have no idea what this Exhibit C is going to end up being until close to the end. And that, for me, running numbers makes me nervous. But walking through what all these costs are for, the actual Exhibit C stuff is very important, guys, because this is literally how your house is going to be able to be built, and the things that are going out around your house and the structural of your house with the stormwater, the septic, the well water, the electrical, the like there's so much that goes into this, and then plus the permitting to make sure that's all done correctly. So our Exhibit C was estimated around $135,000, which is on the high end. And this is where I wanted to stay away from, because when we got an estimate, it was a big estimate, right? Like you're down here at like $90,000 to like $140,000. I wanted to be over here, and we are so not. Like, we are up here. But that is with estimated extra costs just in case anything comes up in this process that you aren't expecting. Like, what if we do hit a ton of rock? We have estimated costs for that to be excavated. So all in total, with all of that, the base price, the additions that we've done, the lot development, we're looking at about almost $456,000 with this house when it's said and done. And when we got into this process, I wanted to be as close to 400 as possible, because that's roughly where we're going to end up selling our current house. So I wanted to be relatively on par with the current house. Like, okay, if we sell for 400, we're going to make a good chunk of money on our home, and we'll be able to put it as a down payment, and then we'll be able to get our mortgage relatively, not even close to where we're at now, but relatively down to where we felt would be good. And then seeing the cost going up about $50,000 for us has been a little bit like, woo, that's a lot. But if we want to take a grand scheme look at everything that's on the market right now, $450,000 in central Pennsylvania will not get you this house brand new. It doesn't, unless you're working with a builder. It is very hard to get a $450,000 resale house that's going to be brand spanking new with everything updated, new roof, HVAC, no issues. Like, it's going to be hard to find that, because a lot of resale homes right now of this size are $450,000, if not more. And that's just how it is. Now, when you factor in the cost that we have bought a 2-acre property, that's not included in these costs. So our lot was $135,000, and obviously on top of that, $456,000. We are a lot higher in a home than I ever thought that we would be. But this is our forever home. This is something that we know we're going to stay in for a long period of time, die in, our kids could inherit. Like, that is worth it to me. Okay, this is going to be a $500,000 investment. So take that with what you will. It is a lot. It's still overwhelming to me. But again, it's really hard to find anything even on 2 acres around here for this price. So I'm thrilled about the actual overall cost. It was going to cost us so much more going with a different builder to build on this lot, which I could go into in another detailed video about just how overwhelming it is to choose a builder. But to find one that we would be able to build in total a $500,000 home that is going to be on a 2-acre lot, we wouldn't be able to touch that in a resale home at this point. So I feel really good about our decisions. It's overwhelming to see these numbers. It still, to me, is like I can have sleepless nights thinking I'm going to spend this much money on a house. But it's not even just a house for us. It's an overall experience. It's the land. It's just being able to build a different style life that is intriguing to us to spend this money. So if you're somebody that's on the fence about building, or on the fence about buying a house in general, and you're like, why would I want to spend that much money? Think about the reason as to why you're buying or building or spending this much money. It's not just to spend it for fun. Like, I'm not just out here buying a 2-acre property for fun. I want to use this acreage, and it's something that I've been very passionate about for many years, to have this many acres, but also to be in the location that we wanted. We wouldn't be able to find this in this location. So you have to really lay out your pros and cons. And often buying a home or building a home in general is always going to be a better outcome than renting something or buying a house just to buy it and not having a reason for it other than, oh, I've been told that it's good to be a homeowner. It's good to be a homeowner if you have the ability and the emotion toward why you're buying that home. So again, that could be a whole nother topic as well, but I will save that for a rainy day. Now, before I talk about the actual process with the engineer, I want to kind of go through a little bit of the contract and what we're doing in stages, because this is going to be a very lengthy stage process, and I'm going to keep everybody updated on how that goes. At this point, all we have done is we've gone to selections, we've picked everything, and we've paid our deposit. So we do have a 5% deposit to pay to Berks. That was about $22,000, $23,000. That goes to Berks for the hold to get paid to the contractor to start the agreement. Now at this point, we have 5 more pulls that they're going to do from us during this process to gain money to do the build. So the first draw that they will do is when they have completed the foundation walls of our home, and that's a 20% deposit. So once that's done, someone goes out and looks and checks and makes sure everything's good. I know we'll already go and look at everything because we're there pretty much every week anyway, so we'll be able to keep on track of everything. But once the foundation walls are completed, we pay a 20% deposit down for that. It's another chunk of money. They're called draws. Then once the house is framed and closed, we will then pay a 30% draw to Berks for the completion of that portion. And then when the mechanicals and the roof shingles are completed, we will pay a 20% deposit. So that would be our third draw. We're pretty much getting to the end, and then we would have our drywall, interior doors, and trim installed. Before all of that happens, we will have a pre-drywall inspection. So we will be able to go out to the house, take a look at everything that they've done before they put pretty much the finishing touches on everything. So make sure that structurally everything's where you want it. You can check on your electrical, make sure things are good where you want it. So before all that happens, pretty much at the third draw, we're going to be able to really be involved in seeing the home. But then the drywall, the interior doors, your trim is installed, and that's another 20% deposit. Then at the very end, it's called substantial completion, and that is when pretty much everything is getting tied up, and that is your last 10% that you're paying to that final chunk. So there's a lot of moving pieces. It's going to feel like a drag, and it's also going to feel very fast, because when you start to pay these chunks down, you're like, okay, I only have a couple more things to go, and okay, we're at this point in the process. So it feels very all over the place, going quickly, not going quickly. That's just kind of how this process is. So to prepare you for building a home, know that if you are doing any sort of financing or anything like that, you do have a deposit up front that you will have to pay. You do have a loan that's going to be paying in chunks toward the build. So you want to make sure that your build is actually being completed, especially if you're going with a very small custom builder. You want to always double check on their work. Thankfully, I know Berks does a phenomenal job, and they have a very trustworthy process. So I don't feel as stalkerish of making sure they're getting things done. But obviously you do want to make sure that your builder is adhering to what you're paying for, because in order to pay out that loan, they need to make sure that the work is being completed. So there is a lot that goes into these stages of just making sure that things are getting done on time, especially with, this kind of stage that we're in right now with engineering and permitting, and you're given a time frame of when they're going to start to do things. You want to make sure that that 4 to 8 week window or whatever it is with certain things is getting completed on time. That is just, how this process goes. You're going to be going in chunks of time to get things completed. And like I said earlier, there's always the opportunity that things could go south, and that's just how this process is. That's how real estate is in general, guys. You could be having the perfect experience, then all of a sudden one small minor thing happens, and it's okay to feel anxiety about this process. This is not a normal thing to go through. I tell people that when we are buying a home in general, it's not a normal process. It's very emotional. It's tiring. There's a lot of moving pieces, and when you can't be in control of everything, it's difficult. It's even difficult for me as a real estate agent with my clients, not being able to be in control of every little thing that happens. And especially with building, and there's so many moving pieces and so many hands in the pot, you don't know what's going to happen. And especially when you're dealing with, something as simple as dirt and rocks and whatever else, you never know what they're going to come across, and you never know what kind of hurdles you're going to have to jump, waiting on people with deadlines and things like that. So just recognize that it's okay to have anxiety. It's also okay to take a step back and trust the process, and know that if you're overestimating for costs like we're doing, and you're just kind of taking things with the wind, finding patience, that's something that we've had to learn a lot because we're so excited. You will have a good experience, and it's okay if things do go a little south. That is expected. If it doesn't, that's great. But know that things cannot always be perfect with the build process, and this is just something that happens in the real estate industry entirely. So to kind of break down the Exhibit C to understand what we are paying for, I think it's really important for you to know even what goes into building a home. It sounds crazy, but there are so many things that you have to pay for that I didn't even realize are like, hefty costs. And I'm like, ooh, like that's kind of crazy. I didn't know it cost that much for topsoil and whatever else. So things as far as like excavation and foundation, depending on what you need to do for your property, like demolition, we don't have anything to demo. We are literally just going into the ground. So depending on what you need for your property is what's most important. For us, things like just excavation for foundation, footers for the garage and porch, that's included. Same as the backfilling of foundation walls and backfilling of the garage and porch is included with Berks cost. Things like stripping the topsoil, that's like $2,600. The grading of the subsoil, almost $2,000. I'm sorry, $1,900, $2,000. The topsoil to final grade would be $4,800. Seeding of disturbed areas, I never knew how much it costs to rake and seed, guys. This is like $5,700. Like things like that, it starts to add up. So just keep that in mind. But these are like things that have to happen for you to build on property. So that cost right there alone for the excavation and foundation for us is about $15,000. Then when you're talking about things like utilities, which are obviously things that you absolutely have to install, we will have a sewer trench, a water trench, and electric hookup. We are not gas. So those things all together for trenching it and putting them and installing is about almost $12,000. As far as like driveways and public walkways, depending on what your township requires you to have, we are not required to have a public sidewalk. So that was a great cost to save, but the driveway itself for us is going to be about almost $12,000. And that's for up to 2,500 square feet. I don't know genuinely how big this driveway is going to be now after we have just changed the orientation of the house. So that cost could go up, it could go down, depending on I'd have no idea how much this is really going to be. And then adding in anything with like administration, miscellaneous fees, we have a $500 fee here for just permit procurement. So really that's just getting additional permitting done. And then excavation cost another $1,500 for these silt socks. So that was a requirement. And then we have more with the utilities. So we're including a well pump because we're well water. That's $8,500. To drill the well, another $8,500. And then to install the septic system, hopefully this is still around the same cost, could be less, is about $30,000. So in total for our utilities, we're looking at about $47,000, which we knew was going to be probably one of the biggest chunks of this entire process, was getting the utilities set up and getting them functioning and just installing. So that alone is a really big chunk of that overall $135,000 of this money. And then for our stormwater, to install the stormwater controls in the stakeout area, that was $12,000. We are hoping that stormwater cost goes down. Just talking to the engineer today about what the plans are, he said our stormwater is not going to be massive, so I'm really hoping that cost might lower a little bit for us. But as far as like engineering for like putting the pins out and the stakes for the house with the surveyor, that's about $1,500. Like all in all, that chunk of stuff was $71,000. So that was a huge amount of that money. And then for the permitting, there's an $8,000 fee for the permitting. And then Berks is having us do our own septic design and our own soil and erosion plans. So that's why we hired the engineer. to do those things. That's additional cost for us outside of this. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about the engineering. This is going to be something entirely different depending on your builder and depending on what they're having you do. So for that permitting for Berks, it's costing us about $8,000. Okay, then we have a couple of other costs in here. So the $10,000 rock allowance. I hope to God we don't have to use any of that or use only some of that, because for blasting and hauling and hammering all the rock, $10,000 is a lot of money that we could hopefully save. But then there's also a $5,000 excessive insufficient fill on site cost. So that $1,500 for the, $15,000 for the excavation subtotal, I'm really hoping lowers. Fingers crossed to that. You just never know what you're going to end up with when it's all said and done. And we will not know that for a long period of time. So for now, we've overestimated for that. Then anything with the electrical, that all that kind of good stuff, you have to go through the electric company, trying to figure out all of those costs. And then really there wasn't anything much else on here. So that total cost that I just described is what adds up that $134,675 in total. And then there's a administration fee that was added in there too. So there's just a bunch of costs that come along with this lot development that add up slowly. And I mean, obviously all of this is necessary for you to put your house on this property. So Exhibit C is the most important, but it's also very pricey. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these base prices of, $218,000. You need to keep in mind that you're going to endure some costs of actually developing that land to put a house on it. Again, if you're building on your own land. If you're in a development, it's going to look entirely different because they're already putting in place those costs with the land. They've already started working on developing that land, and you're going to be in a development with a bunch of other people working with that builder. So that cost could look entirely different with what they've already worked on and already installed. That is a conversation for you to specifically have with the builder that you choose. For us, because it's on our own land that's completely undeveloped, it's literally just a grassy field of whatever. There's so many things that we have to do that we have not started. There's no permitting. I mean, we're literally starting that process now. So bear that in mind when you're building also on your land. That's why it takes so much longer than just throwing up in a development, because you haven't started anything on your own property. At least with like building in a Berks community, they've already started that process of permitting and everything. So when you go to them to build, they're already steps ahead from where you're at right now. So now moving on to the engineer, and the reason why we've hired Chris Hoover, because obviously, as I said, there are some things that Berks is having us hire out for that they are not preparing for us. So we contacted Chris. He was able to get us a quote. We are paying him in a total $10,400 for him to do the work that he needs to do on this portion of the property, which is he's helping us with the subdivision plan, getting the recorded deed pulled for our property to make sure that we are building everything appropriately on this lot and that it's being placed exactly where it needs to be, and things are going to be in accordance with the way that the township and the county needs it to be. So that's obviously a really big step. Then you're including the stormwater plan, which we talked about today. So that was really important to be able to go through that with him, how we wanted to lay that out in accordance that we needed to. And then preparing erosion control plans for that, and also preparing the on-site septic design for us, which is the reason why with the whole subdivision and the way that things are laid out, and what we were talking about today with him is moving the property to better benefit us with the plans of the septic. So it's amazing to have somebody like that, because for us, obviously, the way that we changed things up today, it could have been an entirely different feel on our lot. So he is the expert, and we trusted his opinion to be able to make an informed decision about where we should place our home and why it would be beneficial for that. There are some costs that we could go through Chris for that we didn't need to. One of them being like utility design, unless there's something that comes up with that we need to do. That kind of stuff is not included. There's some other permits, but wetlands, things like that we did not need. And then we are not on a state road. So if we were on a state road, there would be different permitting. So he's pulling all of this permitting for us. That's the reason why it's so costly too, is permits are not cheap. So we also have a conservation zoning district permit that we need to pull. And the way that he was explaining it to us is it's not just the township's approval that we need to get for the things that we want to do with this lot. It's the county's approval of the things that we need to do because of the type of property that it is. We're in a rural agricultural zoning district. They want to make sure that the property is being used in the correct ways and making sure that when we're digging up this land, we're not disrupting a lot more than we should be, because that's the whole point of conservation, right? We're trying to keep the community and the earth as it should be. And when you're destroying something and moving things around, they want to make sure that you're doing it appropriately. So all that being said, it's going to cost us a little bit more for the permitting. It is what it is. We are thrilled with our 2 acres, even though it's rural agriculture and we aren't building a barn. So in total, this has costed us, with the cost of the engineering, we're at almost about $470,000 in the total of this, and then with our lot included, the 135. So yeah, we're at a pretty hefty number at the end of the day. Again, we were not going to find this opportunity in a lot of resale properties. So taking a step back and looking at everything that's included, understanding that depending on the lot that you're building in, or depending on the development that you're building in, depending on the type of home that you're building and the type of things that you include, your cost could look very different than our cost. This is just a really good rough idea for you to understand everything that goes into actually building a home, why it gets so costly, how the numbers add up very quickly. We could have definitely cheaped out on the house, guys. Like, we don't have to put in a finished basement. We don't have to put in a morning room. We don't have to do the upgraded cabinetry or put in a range hood. This is our forever home. This is where you could bury me in the backyard. I wouldn't even care. Like, I know for a fact I don't want to redo or try to fix or add on to this house later. I want to be able to enjoy it now when my kids are young. That's the whole point of us moving, is so we don't have to do any more projects, do anything to this home to make it what we want it to be. It's just going to be. And at what cost does that make sense for people? At the end of the day, building for us made the most sense on a lot that we knew we would use so much of and get years of enjoyment out of with our kids and our family. This just overall makes so much sense. So yes, when looking at the numbers, and God hoping some of them come down, just being really transparent with you, it's really hard to find this kind of property for this price point. And I'm sure in a bunch of different states where people do real estate, this is still going to be a very cheap property for the kind of home that we're getting. We are getting a 4-bed, 2 full bath, 2 half bath home with a finished basement, with a morning sunroom, all in all for everything at less than $600,000 on 2 acres. It's unheard of. So I want to make that very clear, that it sounds like a lot of money, but when you are really shopping around for homes and you're looking at builders or you're looking at resale homes, this honestly is still such a phenomenal deal, and we feel very confident in the choice that we made. I know people have questioned, like, what the heck are you doing? It just makes a lot of sense, guys. At the end of the day, this is such a good opportunity for us. And I'm happy to kind of walk through what these costs could be for you if this is something that you're looking for, to break these down a little bit more, because there are very in-depth things on these sheets that I could walk through for days of just what all we're paying for and why. But overall, this is a good breakdown of just seeing what all the build process entails. I hope this was informative. I'm excited to share as the weeks go on. Obviously, Chris has to redo our plans because we changed where we're going to be placing the house. And then once he has those plans finished, obviously Berks is going to take over with finalizing our plans for the property. So until we have this kind of portion done, the permits are starting to be pulled, things like that, there's really not a whole lot happening at this point other than just waiting and seeing when things are going to be done. With an estimated dig date of June, July, I'm really hoping it's June. We're still hoping that we can be in this house by the end of 2026, hoping that things go smooth. Our plan is still to sell our home in probably June and move in with family. So we're definitely going to have a lot of updates for you guys as far as what's happening with our process. But really, this was the big chunk that we've been waiting to get done, is just let's get this started and see exactly how much our costs are going to be when we really start to literally dig into this property. Thank you so much for watching, for listening to our story, for being involved in this process. I really hope that you are enjoying seeing the changes that we are going through. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to share this journey with our family with you, because it just still feels so surreal. And I can't wait to look back one day on this and be like, I can't believe we did this. And to be able to share this process and give people information that they may not have access to or may not understand gives me a lot of fulfillment. And I hope that this is something that you consider for your family. I never considered building. I pushed that opportunity away, and I really wish that we would have had this conversation sooner. But if we did, we probably wouldn't be in the same boat. So I'm very happy with our choice of the lot we chose and the home we chose, the builder we chose. Everything so far has been just absolutely phenomenal. We are loving the experience, and I can't say better things about Berks and just how we've been treated so far. And just watching our land, even though nothing has changed, it's just every time we go to the land, it feels like a different experience. We're getting further into the process every single day. It's starting to feel like it's going to be our home, and I'm really already missing this home. We haven't left yet, but I'm packing, and just that feeling of packing is starting to become so real for us. So thank you for being here and for listening, for being a part of my emotional journey with this, and for sharing your thoughts and your prayers and your love and your comments. I appreciate all of it, and I look forward to sharing more of this journey.